442213 or 511. Which numeric grouping do you prefer? That's among the things we will discuss, in addition to an unedited version of the Bill Belichick, Dabo Swinney conversation that I had a few days ago. This is the College Game Day podcast. Thanks for listening. We encourage you to download wherever you prefer to get your podcast or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Rece Davis and Pete Thamel here. Pete Thamel, as I'm looking now, doing his best Eugene Levy impression with the glasses, the addition there. You're ready to go to Schitt's Creek now, aren't you?
I will say this, Rece. After 47 years being blessed with good eyesight, I am now a reader's wear glasses wearer. I was diagnosed as having trombone syndrome, where you take your phone and you have to hold it away from your face in order to read it like this. I was doing it with menus and my phone, and my wife probably noticed it 4 months ago, and I tried to deny, thought my eyes would regenerate, and they have not. So we got a little new look for some reading. Here we are.
That's good. I did it for the first time because I was doing the trombone when I started doing Game Day, and I didn't like taking the readers on and off. So I went multifocal contacts, and at the beginning there was very little, if anything, for distance, but it just allowed you to to still look down and read your phone or read your notes. And gotten a little bit stronger over the years, and then you continue to play with it. Sometimes I think I should have just gone back to the readers and forgotten about it. You've had to read some fine print and between lines in the SEC meetings, as there has been jockeying for position. There have been salvos fired, thinly veiled in some cases, as it pertains to what the new college football playoff format will look like starting in 2026. What have you gleaned from your time in the greater Destin area?
Well, it is peak talking season, right, Rece? These are very conference meeting centric topics, but the biggest topic here that's dominated the conversation is the future of the college football playoff from 2026 and beyond. So Greg Sankey spoke to us on Monday night, and I left that conversation thinking that there was some momentum for the SEC to discuss having 4 automatic qualifiers. And it just fit a lot of things, and that would start a cascade effect with 9 games and some scheduling things and whatnot. And Greg left a few breadcrumbs, including the shot you mentioned to the ACC and the Big 12, who gave kind of good of the game pep talks to their commissioners and comments publicly. And he rebutted that a little bit as it went. But even that was the point of that wasn't as much to take a jab at them, was to say they haven't provided us good alternatives or good models. So that was Monday night. Where we got after Tuesday was, I think, a really distinct pivot, and I think a really important moment if we do end up without automatic qualifiers for this playoff. Now, to go background a little bit, the Big Ten and Tony Petitti have been very clear. They want 4 automatic qualifier spots, which will give them some play-in games for the playoff. And the theory there, which I think is a sound theory generally, is that it would energize the regular season if you have 6 postseason teams, essentially. Like the race to 6 will involve 9-10 teams, depending on the year, and it would really energize November the way that the wild card chase in the NFL energizes November. So that was the consensus thought, and I'm rambling a little bit here. But on Tuesday, Greg Sankey got the podium, and he pivoted to talking about a 16-team model that includes 5 automatic qualifiers and 11 at-larges. And quite frankly, is a much cleaner, simpler version. It does rely a lot on the selection committee, which people in the SEC, Scott Strickland was among them yesterday, aren't particularly big fans of selection committees. And the thought is automatic qualifiers could take some of the ambiguity out of the selection process. And here where the SEC only got 3 teams in, I think there's a little bit of a grudge towards the committee. So here we are today, Rece. We are taping Wednesday at lunchtime here in Destin. And the feel is that the coaches want the coaches do not want automatic qualifiers. They'd prefer to keep an 8-game SEC schedule, and they would prefer a 5+11 model. The ADs want a 9-game schedule and the money that comes with it, and they want the automatic qualifiers, which are sort of like protectors. And Greg Sankey is stuck in the middle of those two very powerful groups, trying to find consensus and build solution. I don't think we're going to get much clarity out of this meeting, but I do think the important takeaway is this. I don't think Greg Sankey would have spoken to the media yesterday about 5-11 if that did not emerge searingly as a potential model. Now, there will be some clash with the Big Ten and how it all goes. We don't know, but I do think Greg Sankey bringing that up and ushering that topic to the forefront is a signal flare for where this thing could end up.
There's probably no way to fix everything, but the biggest problem college football's postseason has had since they started the BCS and even prior to that with the old Bowl Alliance is the law of unintended consequences. They make a decision that they think is going to rectify a problem that they have identified that has shown up in the past. And then a bigger problem emerges that they didn't foresee or they diminished. And I think they need to be comprehensive in how they address this. And I realize that's pretty obvious to state that. And I think guys like Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are trying to do that. I think there are more undesirable, unintended consequences that would come from automatic qualifiers than from the other way. Now, there is a lack of trust for the selection committee and the criteria and the process that they employ that is evident, as you mentioned. So to me, I think the 5 automatic qualifying with 11 at large, and I've been pretty much on board with this. I don't really, for a long time, I'm not an automatic qualifier guy for a number of reasons. Here's what I would suggest. 5 and 11, but you've got to overhaul the selection process in order to establish some more trust in it by all entities. The other thing, the SEC coaches who don't want to play 9 conference games, get over it, man. Play them. So if you somehow amend, improve, define more clearly while still allowing some subjectivity, how the selection committee would evaluate, then that extra loss as it pertains to a playoff is not as likely to hurt you. Meaning that if you play a 9th conference game, you get a very difficult SEC schedule, as Georgia had last year and will have this year, and you take another loss, it is unlikely to hurt you. I understand when people look back last year, there's no question that Indiana and SMU had easier paths. But the SEC teams all did something that was deemed to be disqualifying. I thought they were disqualifying in terms of the types of losses. But people are being disingenuous if they dismiss that out of hand and say, oh, you just wanted the SEC teams in. And I've seen some of our colleagues say this, and they know better, and it's infuriating. They know what the point is. The point is that if given other opportunities to step on a banana peel, bigger opportunities with bigger banana peels, that might very well happen to lesser teams. Okay. But the Alabamas, the Ole Misses, the South Carolinas last year were only in consideration for that last playoff spot or last couple of playoff spots because they played that type of schedule. If Indiana or SMU had had those banana peels along the way, if they had lost another game, if they had lost in resounding fashion as Alabama did to Oklahoma or as South Carolina did to Ole Miss, if they had lost games in resounding fashion to lesser opponents, they would not have been under consideration to begin with. So it's also disingenuous to pretend like that those teams aren't getting any benefit from playing those types of schedules. So adding a game to it, in theory, should help you. There is an entire history of the sport of looking at the final record and saying, well, that team has to be ranked above the other team because they lost fewer games. Got to find a way to get past that within the selection committee room. And then you also have to allow for enough subjectivity to take the Ole Miss loss to Kentucky, the Alabama loss to Oklahoma compared with a loss to combined with a loss to Vanderbilt, South Carolina's loss to Ole Miss in resounding fashion, Miami to get it away from the SEC, Miami's loss to Syracuse, while not bad in and of itself, but coupled with the fact that they didn't really have a wildly impressive win on the resume that deemed them disqualifying and behind 2 other teams in their own conference, which last year was not as strong as some of the others. So I've gone on a monologue now, but it has to be holistic. It has to be holistic. You just coming up with a numerical formula of X number of conference games and X number of automatic qualifying bids won't get the job done. What will get the job done is finding a formula, sticking with it, and deciding how you want the teams to be evaluated. If you want to give a certain percentage to the subjectivity of the rankings and another percentage of it to the objective nature of various strength of schedule metrics, power metrics, whatever it may be, then let's do that. And that would be best. That would be better than doing the automatic qualifying. I understand some of the appeal to the automatic qualifiers. It feels very much like the NFL. You're fighting your way in amongst your peers within your conference. But inevitably, if you do that many, there are going to be years when the Big Ten deserves 6 and somehow they're going to get squeezed to 5 or to 4. There are going to be years when the ACC deserves 4, but they're capped at 2 and maybe they get a third at large. So if you just do the at large and do your conference champions and the at large, it is the lesser of the evils. Nothing is foolproof, but it's the best way. But it has to be holistic. There's no magical formula for picking the 16 that's going to alleviate everything. So you got to pick what's best, and you also have to address the selection criteria in order to promote confidence in that. And I believe the committee is diligent. I believe they're honest. I don't believe they have agendas. They want to do the best thing they can do, but they are human and they are aware of the perception of including Alabama instead of SMU, of including South Carolina instead of SMU and Alabama when Alabama might have beaten South Carolina or Ole Miss beat them or whatever. They're aware of those things. So I like having some subjectivity in the process, but it's probably time to put some more defined objective measures in there that will hopefully reinforce some confidence in the committee's mission. Other than that, I don't have any opinions on this, Pete.
So one of the things that emerged is the idea, Rece, that if the SEC wants to keep an 8-game conference schedule, there's going to end up being resistance to the playoff growing to 16, because there is still how many conference games have you scheduled animosity that has lingered and kind of festered in the sport for about a decade. That debate has gone on. And so there was a notion and sense as the 4A4 commissioners met in New York and in Charlotte within the past couple weeks that 16 seemed like the most likely compromise for a number. So just some of the knee-jerk reaction momentum was, hey, if you still want to go to 16, we're hesitant to go there if you're not going to challenge yourself to 9 conference games like the Big Ten is challenging themselves to 9 conference games. So I thought that was like an interesting. We're at a little bit of stare down time because the Big Ten very clearly wants automatic qualifiers. Its ADs and its commissioner Tony Petitti have been very clear about that. The SEC right now is a little bit muddled. I think the ADs want the 9th game and the extra money that comes with it. They want the security of the AQs. The coaches are in a drastically different place. Now, I think one thing is really important here is that Greg Sankey has never come out publicly and said, we want AQs. He just hasn't done it. And he's a very calculating guy. And I mean that as a compliment. Yeah, he's a smart guy and he's calculating in a way of he's only going to say something, he knows it will reverberate forever. So he has been guarded on the AQ topic, where Tony Petitti has been aggressive on the AQ topic because his ADs are aggressive on the AQ topic. And that creates more money, more revenue, more games when you start talking 3-6, etc. So I just think as we're being left breadcrumbs, Rece, on where this goes, the fact that we still haven't heard that definitively from Greg Sankey, combined with the intentionality of talking 5 plus 11 yesterday, is guiding us maybe to a different place than we all thought things may go in the past few weeks.
I understand people get up in arms over the 8 versus 9. I want them to play 9. Heck, I wish they'd play 10. I wish they'd all play 10. But the conferences are so big now that it's almost a ridiculous thing to worry about, because the conference schedules, no matter what the number is, they aren't the same. I mean, even look in the SEC last year. Texas comes in its first year in the SEC, and its schedule in no way, shape, form, or fashion came close to the gauntlet that they put Oklahoma through. Not even close. Florida's is not like is not like Arkansas or something. I'm not saying Arkansas is particularly easy. I'm just grabbing one out of a hat. SMU's ACC schedule missed all the contenders, and for the most part. The Big Ten, same deal. So obsessing over the number of conference games you play is nothing more than a bargaining chip. It's nothing more than some card to try to hold out to get something else that you want. And if you think it's really that important, you just haven't thought it through. And it sort of goes back to the original point I made about establishing selection committee criteria in a more defined way as it pertains to some of the objective measures, meaning metrics, strength of schedule. And they would also be well served, which they do, which they are charged to do, is to treat teams like the NCAA basketball tournament selection committee does. They don't go in and evaluate whether a team is from a particular conference. If the schedule they played within their conference benefited them and gave them better metrics and more, in the basketball parlance, quad 1 wins or whatever, then that is to their benefit. But they aren't viewed as, well, they played in the SEC or they played in the ACC. And that should be the charge for the football guys too, and I know that it is. But that's why this whole 8 versus 9 thing is sort of a misdirection, sort of a, hey, look over there, they don't do this because they want something else. And the SEC, not to cast them as the totally purist of driven snow here, they're holding on to it because they're like, well, look, we believe we're stronger. It just means more. We tell everybody it just means more. So we're going to hold on to this because clearly our 9th game would be far superior to anything you other little conferences could do with your 9th game. And some years that might be true. Last year, maybe it wasn't. So, it's all positioning. And the conferences are so big. These schedules aren't going to be equal just because they're the same number in a particular conference. They're just not. And it makes it, I make it sound like it's easy. Just do 5-11, come up with these criteria. It's not easy. This is a very complex thing to do the best they can for making the playoff as good and as attractive as it can possibly be. And still, there will be controversy. There will be something that none of us have thought of that will pop up probably within the first year or two of the playoff. And we go, how in the world did we not see that coming and not create some type of safety net to protect against that?
I do think, Rece, one thing we learned in the 12-team playoff as opposed to the 4-team playoff, and this is a little bit like, when you project out the NCAA tournament and stuff, there were controversies. People got left out. Lane Kiffin still steamed. He kind of hinted at it yesterday that Ole Miss, didn't maybe get a shot at the playoff, and he sort of said, "Hey, we're looking at this from the macro, but everyone looks at their own micro, their own micro issues as we go." But controversy over who's 13 is very different than controversies over who's 5, because, as you've said eloquently today and in the past, like, Ole Miss had their chance and they laid a dinosaur egg against Kentucky. Like, the people who get left out have given you plenty of reasons to leave them out. Whereas, like, when Baylor and TCU got squeezed that year for Ohio State, that was a much harder case to make, right? Their conversation, like, there was a lot of things. So I just think as we grow and go, the furor over being 13, or if it's 17, if we go to 16 or 15, if we go to 14, whatever it is, I understand it and empathize with where people's seats are, but I just can't get too excited about it. You know what I mean? Like, you've had plenty of chances, and you got to win some games, and you got to win some real games. And I understand everybody's argument, looking around, the SMU schedule argument, the Indiana schedule argument. I get it all, but, like, you got to win the ones that are in front of you if you want a loud argument.
Right. And that's the point with Indiana and SMU. And I don't want what I said earlier misunderstood. I would have had them in the field. Might have taken Miami over SMU, to be honest with you. And probably a pretty good case could have been made for Ole Miss as well. No question about that there were other cases to be made. But the thing is that they had no margin for error at all. The other teams had some margin for error and just had too many errors. And that has to factor in sometimes too when you're doing a subjective evaluation. Even if Vegas says a team would win, even if the power ratings say that they would win, even if your eyes tell you they would win, at some point you have to evaluate if you've had too many errors. Especially if they're catastrophic ones. We've mentioned several times, Alabama's at Oklahoma. I don't even put Vanderbilt in the same thing. Vanderbilt is your run-of-the-mill upset in a relatively close game. The Oklahoma one was disqualifying. Probably the margin of victory for a margin of loss for South Carolina to Ole Miss was probably disqualifying, given the rest of their resume. The other head-to-head loss to Alabama. And Ole Miss's loss at home to Kentucky, coupled with its other losses to, one pretty good team and one average team, probably left them out. So you get the benefit of the doubt. You're under evaluation when you do more difficult things along the way. Otherwise, as I said earlier, those teams would not have been under consideration. But I understand their point. I very much understand the point that Indiana's road was less fraught with peril. SMU's road was less fraught with peril, than those that they mentioned. But it's part of it sort of balances out in a lot of ways. I don't know that I'm optimistic that they'll come to a holistic measure, a holistic solution to it. I hope they do. And I hope it's one that keeps the fans engaged into the late season, because my biggest problem with the whole, and I'll leave it at this, my biggest problem with the whole play-in weekend, as much as that sounds like some fun, 6 versus 3, 5 versus 4, inevitably some year you're going to wind up with a 6 that won a 4-way tie for 6. They're not that good, and they catch lightning in a bottle, ball bounces off a tuba, they knock off number 3, quarterback turns his ankle in a game they probably shouldn't even have to play to get there. And then you have the bigger problem of a less deserving team advancing. Now, I know what people are going to say immediately. They say, what about the basketball tournament? We love Cinderella. And you do to a degree. And there are a few exceptions in the long and storied history of the NCAA tournament. But generally speaking, that Cinderella, that 15 seed, and there are exceptions, I know, but the 15 seed that bounces to 2 usually makes for a far less compelling round of 32 game. And if they somehow get past that, then they almost inevitably get smoked in the Sweet 16. This is a national championship where the regular season needs to be protected, and I think that there are more downsides to those than upsides. Some years, it would be awesome when you have, when there's not much difference in 3 and 6 and they're playing on campus in December, and it would be fantastic. And I'm all for more meaningful games. But looking at it from a 30,000-foot view and saying, okay, what could go wrong? What are the downsides? What's the upside to it? I just see more downside than upside, and I think that you have enough access to carry interest deep into November, if not all the way through November, by having 11 at-large bids. That's a lot, and there are a lot of ways to get into it. And you also, the other thing you do is you foster the arguments and discussions like the ones we're having here. If it's pretty much cut and dried, that may alleviate some things. But a lot of this sport is built on the passion generated from people disagreeing with how the postseason sets up. And if you wind up with, SEC, ACC, Big 12 for one spot, that's probably good for the enterprise. Everybody arguing about it. So anyway.
So let me throw this out real quick, Rece, because I think it's interesting. If the SEC goes to 9, the Big Ten's already at 9. Is there a way to leave the 9th game on the schedule open And then instead of creating play-in games, you create compelling interconference matchups that are going to directly affect the playoff game. So say Indiana last year didn't have that signature win, right? Does Indiana end up having a prove-it game against Illinois, a very good conference team that has a good resume, et cetera? Like, is there the flexibility in the scheduling to do that? I don't know. That's just like a theory and an idea that is the one thing COVID season taught us was that we can be more nimble with this than people believed originally, scheduling wise, right? We could be much more nimble, right? What was that? Was that BYU Coastal game? That got scheduled like the 2 days before. Yeah, BYU Coastal. Yeah. Did you call that? I know you called a couple of those.
I did not. No, I did not. I did not call that one. But
no, you called that. It was BYU Navy, right?
BYU Navy. Yeah.
Yes.
Belichick was on for like almost a whole quarter in that game.
All right.
It'll be on longer than that.
For where we're going.
Yeah.
So let me wrap with this idea. You have announced every single college football playoff selection show in the history of the college football playoff, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So let me make you czar for the podcast here. Give me the Rece Davis solution that you think is fair and just for all here as we move. What is your czar? I king you czar for the day. What do you do?
5-11, but each champion for all 5 conferences and Notre Dame would not get an automatic bid, have to meet a threshold. Pretty easy threshold. They don't have to be ranked in the top 16 of the committee rankings, but I would say that all of the conference champions, including the group of 5 one, has to be ranked. So that way you don't run into, an obscure champion grabbing a bid and not really being worthy of competing for the national championship. So 5-11 with the 5 conference champions having to meet a certain ranking threshold, which would probably be not difficult to attain, just meaning they have to be ranked in the top 25. I don't think that's unfair with a 16-team playoff. Beyond that, I would establish a formula which was probably had heavier weight in the subjective realm of what the committee decides with its rankings, but has some objective criteria based on an agreed upon strength of schedule metric, a strength of record metric, and some power ratings based on how they play and how they might look going forward. That way you have a little bit of the best of both worlds. I know the committee members now would say, well, we already employ those. I would say they employ them in a defined way. We know which ones they're looking at. We know how much weight it carries. And then you get the answer. And that's how you establish who the large teams are. That's what I would do. Have I left anything out?
No, I think we need to call Bill Connolly and get no one comes up with smart football formulas better than our friend and frequent podcast Bill. I think he could get us there with that. I will say one of the things that has been pretty consistent from the ADs that have spoken is the emphasis on strength of schedule. And our friend Heather Dinich obviously knows a lot more about those components, as you do, Rece, from all the shows you called. But I do think that has been one of the loudest cries here, is that strength of schedule has to be adjusted in how it's viewed in this as a metric.
It's a difficult thing because people don't know exactly how it's put together. Sometimes they vary a little bit, and also it has to be defined and determined. And we've talked with Bill about this. What is significant? Because a lot of times you'll hear people just immediately look at the number. Well, Team A, their strength of schedule is 41. Team B's is only 52. Is that really different? I think we can all agree that 7 and 80, almost by definition, has to be different. But, what's the threshold? There's probably not a lot of difference in, 8, 10, 12 spots in strength of schedule. Probably not much difference at all. But a lot of time to go through that, I guess, and I know you'll be watching for that also along with the House settlement talks, and perhaps that comes down. And I'm sure that's been a big topic of conversation there. And some of that, among the topics of conversation that I had with Dabo Swinney and Bill Belichick for the ACC Network special, which recently aired. Don't know if you got a chance to see it, but luckily for you, the unedited version is right here on the College Game Day podcast right now. One of the things that Belichick, you'll hear him say is, Just tell us what the rules are and we'll play by them. So that's one of the things that's facing college football is let's find out what the rules are, both for talent acquisition, for playoff positioning, all of those things. Find out what the rules are and play by them. One of the most compelling things I think you'll hear is these are two guys, wildly accomplished coaches, championship coaches, didn't really know each other until now. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to a special edition of ACC Huddle. Rece Davis, along with a couple of coaching giants, head coach of the Clemson Tigers, Dabo Swinney, and Bill Belichick, new head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Start adding up the trophies and the rings and the resumes. You've got 6 Super Bowls as a head coach, 2 more as a coordinator. You've got 2 national championships as a head coach, another as a player. You guys bring some serious credibility to the ACC. What was it like, Dabo, when you heard the news that Bill was going to take the job at Carolina?
I was excited, honestly. I think it's great for our league. Certainly probably surprised like everyone else because he's arguably the best to ever do it and to do it at the highest level at the NFL. And, he's so close to the all-time winningest record there. So I was probably surprised at first like everyone, but then it was like, wow, this is Bill Belichick coming to the ACC. And so I thought it was pretty cool.
What have the meetings been like, Bill? Here at the ACC, you guys recently had coaches meetings and so forth, as opposed to your previous experience, previous life in the NFL.
Learned a lot. Yeah, learned a lot. Listening to the, people like Coach, like Dabo, Bill O'Brien, guys like that have been around and just trying to, figure out some of the nuances here that we're working with some new rules and some new, policies that are coming into college football. So I'm just trying to figure it out. But Dabo's players have caused me a lot of headaches through the years. I'm telling you. I mean, where do you want to start? Watson, Hopkins, Christian Wilkins came and got him out of Connecticut. Then sent him down to Miami. He was and all the pass rushers. Had so many great defensive linemen. That we couldn't block. So.
Probably because you guys were always drafting late. You never got a chance to draft some of the players. All the players you saw, scouting, pro days, who's your favorite Clemson player that you ever scouted?
It probably would be Wilkins. Character, playing ability, all-around player. He could rush. He could run. He was very good at the point of attack. He was great personal character, really smart kid, went to Suffield Academy. And, is just a man's man. I came from a tough area, out of Springfield, but really, had a heck of a college career and then a heck of an NFL career. We had a hard time blocking him at Miami twice a year. So I didn't like that, but I had a lot. I mean, look, you'd had 1,000 of them. I mean, we double covered Hopkins as much as any player I've ever coached. So
I always told with DeAndre, if one guy was on him, he's wide open. Yeah. If two's on him, he's still open. So throw it anyway. That was kind of the philosophy with Newt. But yeah, Christian, he'll appreciate that. He's a huge Boston guy, and he was a big Patriots fan, and so. He'll appreciate. I don't know if he'll see this or not, but he'll appreciate.
Everybody's going to see it.
Dexter Lawrence might see it too, and have something to argue with you about.
Thankfully, he was in the NFC, but he was unblockable. He has so many great defensive
But
linemen.
I'll tell you, Christian he's special. He won the Campbell Trophy, the top student athlete in all of college football, and got a master's degree in 3.5 years, and he just. He is an amazing story, but as good a player as he is, I mean, and he's got a lot of flash to him, but there's a ton of substance with Christian Wilkins, and that's really ultimately what's made him such a great player and great teammate.
Yeah.
How well did you two know each other before this?
Not well. He came to Clemson. I think he came to Clemson one time, and so I may have met him one time over the years when I was at Alabama, because I was at Alabama for 13 years. And so I think I went to Alabama when I was 18, left when I was 31. So, who gets to do that? But when you do get to do that, you get to meet a lot of neat people over the time. And so I met a lot of great head coaches and different just heroes of mine growing up that that I got to see, you know, at pro days and different things like that coming through practice. But I specifically, I know you came to Clemson one time.
Yeah.
But I feel like I know him just like everybody
that's right.
because he's Bill Belichick. And I mean, you know, how do you not know who he is? And I've been to 2 of your Super Bowls. Unfortunately, I was in Minnesota. I was there. I went to see Dwayne Allen. So I've been to, we've had 7 years in a row with a Clemson guy winning a Super Bowl. But I went to the one in Minnesota. It was the coldest I've ever. I thought I was going to die. But that was a crazy game. But the next year, I think y'all were back there in Atlanta.
Yes.
And I got to see you guys and Dwayne Allen become a Super Bowl champion. So that was pretty cool for me.
Yeah, he did a good job for us. Really did. But yeah, you know, a lot of respect. And of course, knowing you and your staff and what you've done at Clemson, you had so many number 1 draft choices, number 2 draft choices. I mean, all through the years, you know, 20-some years, it's just been a tremendous run. Success has been incredible.
Both of you guys have been able to adapt, embrace new, so to speak. Obviously, with you, Bill, coming into college football as a head coach for the first time, though, you have an encyclopedic knowledge of it, of football in general. And Dabo, I think the way you've changed in terms of the way you look at the portal, you guys have used it judiciously while still maintaining what you believe to be the most important part of program building. What's the most important thing about being willing to adapt to something new if you're going to be effective as a leader, Bill?
Well, I think the main thing for me is to provide the team with what they want and what they need. And you know, our kids want to be good. They want to work hard. They want to get better. They want to be good. They want to be, you know, be a pro. Be a pro in the NFL, be a pro in life, and get a great academic education. So that's what we're built on, and that's what I want to try to provide. Whether that's leadership, whether that's technique on the football field, whether that's a schedule that allows them to achieve their academic goals. That's what they're there for. That's what I'm there for, and I want to try to do everything I can to provide that.
You feel like you've had to change some things to embrace the new era, the way college football is now?
I think to be a great leader, you got to be a lifelong learner. I mean, it's just something that we do all the time. In fact, somebody was asking me about that in an earlier interview with Coach here, and I was like, you know, I mean, he's been successful because he's a lifelong learner, and I think we all are. You know, if you've had any type of consistency, you know, you have to constantly learn and grow, and but also think you got to have some conviction. And you can lead with conviction or you can lead with compromise. I think there's 2 different ways to do it. And I believe what I believe. I don't apologize for being me. And we've won consistently. But I think our purpose is exactly the same as it was 16 years ago. As a college football coach, it hasn't changed one bit. How you go about achieving the purpose, then those things change. Rules change, you know. There's lots of things that we can do now that 16 years ago they put you in jail for. You know, or you know. So, I mean, things evolve, and I think you change. But as far as like my personal approach and philosophy to how we build our team at Clemson, hadn't changed a bit. We're purpose-driven. We're relationship-driven. It's exactly the same. You know, people love to talk about the portal. We've signed 5 portal guys in 5 years. You know, this isn't the first time I've ever used the portal. I've just thought we use it as we need it. As Coach said, I want to do what's best for my team. I want to do what's best for Clemson. I want to do what's best for our staff. I'm not worried about what's best for other people. I want to do what's best for our group. And everybody's situation is different. And I've said this many times, if I left today and took a job somewhere else in college football, half the team would leave. And so you have to build your roster.
Yeah.
You know, you can't go sign 50 high school kids. You got to build your roster. Our situation is different. In the craziest time in the history of college football, in the last 3 years, we're top in the country in retention. And we also have the highest graduation rate. And we've been in the playoffs 7 times in 10 years, and we won the league 8 out of 10 years. And so, you know, again, but it's all been driven by a purpose. And that's what we stay committed to. That's our North Star. How we go about achieving the purpose certainly changes. And you learn and you grow constantly. And man, you know, I mean, when I grow up, I want to be just like Coach. You know, I mean, he's a wealth of knowledge. But here he is. I'm looking at Bill Belichick in our coaches meeting, and he's asking questions. This guy's won more games than any of us are ever going to probably coach in at the highest level of football. And he's sitting in the ACC coaches meeting, very humbly asking some questions.
What's the best question he asked?
Because he's like, now, let's talk about this portal. I thought we just set the portal window here. Now we're going to move it again. And we're talking about a calendar, and we're talking about these things. And because he's inquisitive, you know, he's like, no, I want to understand. And he's not embarrassed to say, you know, I don't understand this. Explain this to me. And that takes a lot of humility, especially from someone who has won at the highest level as much as he has. And he's coached the best players in the history of the game. And here he is sitting in a room full of coaches that you know, we could only dream of having the type of success that he's had. And I think that's really awesome. So I think, you know, we're all different, but to be a consistent winner, you've got to learn and you have to grow constantly. And I think that's what he's done.
I second that. You know, it's just listening to you talk about your program and how you run it. It's a lot of familiar chords, and you learn every day, and every day is different. You have a different team every year. You have different opponents every year. You have different matchups every week. There are the circumstances that are beyond your control that come into it. It's always changing. You got to keep learning.
Yeah. Every year, due to contractual status and other reasons or whatever, sort of made you reshape at least a portion of your team every year. How does that serve you well given the current state of college football, where that's a reality in college football now too?
Yeah, well, it's just a reality. I mean, I don't really know any other way, so I don't know really how it was, 5, 10, 15 years ago in college football. I wasn't in that cycle then, but, what we're seeing now is very similar to what we saw in the NFL. It's different, but there are a lot of similarities, and we'll start the season with about the same number of new players who haven't been with our team at the start of training camp that we would normally start with in the NFL. Call it 30-some guys that'll be with us in let's call it August that weren't with us in the spring, and so that's just what it is.
I noticed your general manager Michael Lombardi said the other day that one of the things that had taken some adjustment, maybe been a little bit disappointing, is that contracts are not viewed as binding as they might be in professional sports. And I'm sure you have some experience with that as well. What's the right structure in both of your judgments for handling this as players have contractual obligations with the NIL and still navigating the portal and their ability to play and go to school where they'd like to go to?
Well, for me, it's really pretty simple. I would just say, tell me what the rules are, and then we'll play by them. Right now, it's a lot of it's up in the air, and once the house settlement's done and once some rules are solidified, and honestly, it'll probably take a year for this to settle in and see how things go. There'll be some adjustments made. Sounds like the judge is already committed to that too. And we'll take a look at things later on. So whatever it is, however the money's distributed and however the contracts are written and whatever the length of the contracts are and so forth, then we'll figure it out. But I'd say right now it's a lot of, we're not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Some people view it one way, some people view it another way, and you just have to come to an agreement on that. But I think things will settle eventually. Right now, they're a little bit up in the air, and we'll see what happens when when everything is a bit more of a declaration to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are no rules right now. We just want some rules. Tell us what they are, and I think we're coming out of a period of complete chaos and where there's no cap. There's, the schools can't handle things directly. It comes from outside entities. You have the agent process is not regulated. I mean, there's a lot of challenges, but I do think that we're about to enter into a much more structured environment that is it might take a year, but I think it's going to create some markets, to where there'll be some transparency. There's an actual cap. I think the best thing about the settlement is it keeps college football scholastic. We're the only sport that's still, everything happens on campus for us, either on our campus or on a high school campus. We're not off and all the other sports, the high schools really don't matter. And we're still a scholastic sport. I think that's a part of it. And then I think rewarding performance will be a part of this, whereas right now it's just a bunch of hypothetical. And again, there's no rules. You can do whatever you want. And once the settlement's in place, I think you have to make internal decisions, both as an athletic department and as a football program. And then this changes from year to year, So, some years you might have that fourth-year quarterback that you have a lot of money invested in, or you may have two really senior tackles and a great wideout or a great corner. And then the next year, those guys move on, so there's some money freed up. So it might give you more flexibility within your cap in recruiting, because you got to retain talent, you got to acquire talent. But I do think that you figure out, just like the NFL, you play premium players at premium positions, right? And if you pay the wrong guys, you're in trouble. So right now, there is no market. There's no transparency. I think it may take a year or so, but I do think that will emerge. Like, I think we all know the quarterback's going to make more than the linebacker. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it is. And right now, there's no rhyme or reason for really anything. It's just whatever feels good in the moment, you can do it. And anybody can be involved. So I think we'll have some clearer rules, more clarity, and I think a little bit more order coming sooner than later. And I think it's going to be a great time to be in college football, for all parties. But there will be some challenges and some unintended consequences, I'm sure, that we'll figure out as we go.
On the subject of rules on the field, and you spent a lot of time last year around the Washington program, so it's not as if some of the nuances of the college rules, whether it's hashes or speed of the game or number of plays in a game, that kind of thing, are totally foreign. What do you think will be the biggest adjustment in terms of the way you manage the game, some of the nuances of the college game, as opposed to the NFL game?
Well, I think just probably less volume, fewer plays, fewer calls, fewer adjustments. But you're looking at fewer on the other side, too. I mean, you're just, it's just not quite as, I would say, expansive as quite as much. And a lot of that has to do with quarterbacks. You look at quarterbacks like, Brady and Mahomes and Rodgers and guys like that have, double-digit years of experience, can do a lot. And, in college, you get a 4 or 5 year player. I mean, that guy's really, has a big leg up on a kid with a year or two of experience. So it's just a little bit different. But in the end, it's relatively speaking, it's about the same. I think it'll be, again, whichever team plays well fundamentally, and, big plays and close games, which are, a lot in this conference, is what it's going to come down to.
Being the noted special teams expert that you are, how do you feel about the rugby punt?
It's an interesting concept. Certainly some teams in college have done very well with it. And it's just in general in the kicking game, I would say, skill of the specialists has improved dramatically, both in college and in professional football. So punters being able to place the ball, hang time, eliminate returns, getting the ball out of bounds, kickers having more range, more height, snappers, that has become truly a specialty now. Yeah. So just the execution of the specialist is so much better than what it was, I would say, even a decade ago, particularly 2 decades ago, that those guys are really, really good. And that's affected the kicking game quite a bit, their skill.
You want to know what a real great recruiter and specialists are? This guy, he pulls somebody out of some cubicle 1 week to kick for it. and then he literally, and then a year later, you win the ACC championship on a 75-yard field goal. This is 56, actually. There was a long one anyway, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we Whitesy, and I'll tell you another one is, we play the New England Patriots this year. We go to North Carolina, and then we go to Boston College and play Bill O'Brien. So I feel like I'm playing the whole Patriots organization in about a 2-week span there. But we went and got our own Patriot. So I think he's got 3 Super Bowl champions, but Ryan Allen, who was a punter for you. So he's our specialist coach, and my secret sauce to finding a way to beat the Patriots in October whenever we play.
Boy, he's a good plus 50 punter now, really good. I mean, he would just get that wedge down there and come down and, land about the 4 or 5 yard line, Slater down it or catch it. He was the master. It was like pitch and catch. I mean, it was really pitch and catch. He's a good one. Yeah, he's really a good one.
So he's our specialist coach. And they changed the rules and allowed everybody to, coach. We brought him in last year, and so we're going to lean on him heavy to figure out how to defeat y'all's punt block team or whatever else. All the rules are different for us, Now, in the pros, you can't. Everybody's a pro style punt team because you can't get out of there when the ball's punted. Whereas now you can go, and that's why you see a lot of rugby stuff in college too. Spending time.
Well, one of the things I've been warned about multiple times is, everybody wants the same number jerseys, right? They got 2 9s, 2 7s, 2 4s, 2 1s, and then we go and punt the ball, and we have to run on with and put the new jerseys on. I'm like, what? Come on! He says, equipment manager handles it. Don't worry about it. I'm like, all right, I'm worried. I would try to get 11 guys on the field. Now we've got to get them on the field with the right numbers and wear switch jerseys and all that. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, they will throw a flag on you.
But since we didn't have numbers in the spring for us, we didn't have to worry about that. But that one's coming.
Yeah, that will become your biggest problem in college football is this number thing because the recruiting and guys come. Oh, it's a nightmare. Everybody's and you don't have 53 guys. You got 100 plus guys. So
I went to your practice in the spring, and that was the thing. How long did it take you to figure out who you were talking to with no numbers? Or no numbers on anybody.
You know what? Learn your teammates. Yeah, learn your teammates. Learn who a receiver and a tight end is. Learn who a linebacker and a safety is. Learn who they are. Learn their names. Learn them.
A relationship.
All of us, the coaches, the players, we don't need numbers. We need to learn our teammates.
How'd you go about it tangibly, though? Because, that has to take some time. What did you do as a memory device or something to make sure, I've got it?
Yeah, you recognize them. You recognize the way they walk, the way they stand, or, certain things. What killed me was guys like Jason and Devin McCourty. When I did that with them, identical twins, they would intentionally wear the same stuff, exactly the same cutoff, the same sleeve, the same socks, the same everything. There was no number on them. And then they would come up to me and say, "Which one am I, coach?" And it was really hard. Those guys killed me, but we had a lot of fun. But you just get to learn your teammates, and that was a good process for all of us.
What was your batting average with the McCourties?
No better than 50-50. No better than 50-50. The worst one was we were at a Super Bowl on Saturday before the game. We were taking the team picture and all that, and Jason walks by, but I thought it was Devin. I didn't know Jason was there. Jason wasn't on our team at that point. Jason walks by and said, "Hey, coach, I'm gonna be late for the meeting tonight. I got to go do something." And it just like, whoa, what are you talking about? And then Devin turns around and goes, "Yeah, but I'll be at the meeting. Don't worry." They nailed me. Yeah, they nailed me.
Both of you guys have a keen eye for talent, even using guys in other sports. Like, I see you at these Clemson basketball games I've called over the years, and I thought that here's a guy who just loves basketball. Turns out he's going to find a linebacker, tight end, or something, and Ian Shefflin right there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What are you looking for when you look for a guy? Because you did it with lacrosse players, Chris Hogan. You're doing it with Shefflin. What are you looking for?
Tough guys, man. And this kid's got a big, thick lower body. I've told him for 4 years he's a football player out there playing basketball. He's 6'7", 260. So he's top of the food chain in measurables for an NFL guy. He's kind of average for an NBA guy at his position. But and he played football. He was a guy that played up until the 10th grade. So I had a little bit of inside knowledge on him, and we'll see how it goes. But, you look around the league. In fact, I think the Chargers just signed a guy today or yesterday who was a basketball guy. And there's a lot of skills that translate. It's like, as I told him, I was like, you've been high-pointing balls for a long time with collision balance. Mm-hmm. And now, but you've been doing it against 6'8", 6'9". Now you're going against 6'3" guys, and you're 6'7". You've been moving your feet, staying in front of guys. but now you can smash them with your hands and they don't blow a whistle and call a penalty. And you've been setting screens and you can't move, trying to create space for a shooter. Well, now you can go, and if they move, you can move, and you can knock them on the ground and get applause for that. So, and you're creating running lanes for a guy instead of a guy trying to get open to shoot a ball. So I think there's a lot of skills that translate if you're a big, thick kid.
Yeah.
And then you see a lot of guys, DeAndre Hopkins, perfect example. He was a basketball player. T. Higgins. T. Higgins was much more of a basketball player. Mike Williams, much more of a basketball player than football player. And we took Mike Williams, he's from little Lake Marion, South Carolina, and he was a jump ball guy. That's it. But he really developed the skills. T. Higgins was a basketball kid that really decided his junior year, you know what, I think football might create more. He could have gone and played Division I basketball. DeAndre Hopkins did play Division I. He played at Clemson. And after his second year, he's finally like, look, I'm like, hey, you might want to get serious about it. He was playing, but he realized that football was probably his best path. But all of those skills translate.
And the big thing is handling the ball.
Handling the ball.
Basketball, you must handle the ball 200 times a day.
Exactly.
You don't get 200 passes a day.
That's exactly
And
right.
those kids are really good basketball players that great hand. DeAndre Hopkins.
Which is why Ian wants to play tight end. Because I'm like, well, he's going to be a tight end or D end. We'll figure that out. And I'm like, I don't know if you've got good hands. And then, his dad's like, oh, he's got good hands. And I'm like, just for what you said, he handles the ball all the time.
All the time, yeah. So, honestly, my best one was wrestling. It's Steve Neal.
Yeah. Yes.
Steve Neal lost in the Olympics to Lesnar, and then didn't play football in junior high, didn't play football in high school, didn't play football in college. Said, hey, can I try to play football? And poor Steve, he didn't know where the huddle was. It's like, where do I go at the end of the play? Steve, you go back here with the rest of these guys. They'll tell you what to do. Started for us for 7 years. Yeah. Great balance, tremendous strength. Tough.
Leverage.
All day tough. Leverage, yes.
Every wrestler that we have signed at Clemson has become a great football player for us. Grady Jarrett was probably my top guy. He was a 2-star recruit. Came to Canada. I'm just like, this guy's amazing. His motor, but he was a wrestling champ. And, that translates. And, he's been playing. He's on year 11 now.
Yeah, really tough.
Sacked Brady 3 times.
Oh, I know.
I wasn't pulling for you in that one. That was an unbelievable comeback.
We were sliding to him, too. So.
But, you're so right, the wrestling component. And you see a lot of basketball kids, skill guys, that go all basketball that I think limit their opportunity. Whereas if they did play football, great receivers, great safeties, great quarterbacks. There's so running backs. That's why I've always told kids, man, play.
Yeah.
Go play. Create opportunity for yourself. Don't limit your opportunity. And I've seen several guys that have benefited from that played both. Well, I love multi-sport guys, especially wrestlers.
Yeah, we've encouraged them to come in and play 2 sports, figure out which one's a sport.
Exactly
maybe it's basketball, maybe it's football, maybe it's lacrosse, maybe it's football. We'll see. I'm good with that.
And you love lacrosse. What is it that you love about lacrosse?
Well, it's a great sport. It's a lot of speed. It's a lot of skill with the stick, and it's contact. There's some strategy, man up, man down situations, stuff like that. So it's a great combination of skills, and it's a lot of fun to play.
When you think about the two of you have had a life in football and have had mentors. You grew up in the game. Your dad was a great coach, the quintessential book on scouting. You played for Coach Stallings, defensive guru also in the NFL. What's the significance of now being able to take that to the next generation, be the mentor, the impact that it had on you, and then being able to mentor people in the way that you were?
Yeah, I don't think too much about mentoring. I think more about still learning from Parcells and my dad and Coach Saban and Coach Ferentz and Coach O'Brien and guys like that I've coached with. Still going back to some of the things that they taught me. Maybe other people pick up things from me, I don't know, but I'm not as intent about here's how you do it. I'm really still trying to do the best job that I can. Now, sometimes if I see somebody doing something that I think I can help them with and instruct them, I will. But honestly, I've been so fortunate to be around so many great coaches, and I've learned so much from them that I still continually go back to a lessons that I learned from them and things I took from them, the notes that I took, and don't forget them because they were so important and so foundational that sometimes you go off on a sidetrack and like, no, I got to come back to home base.
I may get in trouble for asking about this story from Saban, but tell me the story of pass rushing guru Joe Kim, right?
Mm-hmm.
He came in, and you weren't sure what you could learn from him necessarily, so you sent Nick after him? Is that how that worked?
Well, it was interesting. When we had a player, Anthony Pleasant, who was a high draft choice by the Browns, and he came in and he basically said, "What do I need to do to get better? How can I be a better player?" Because he wasn't sure exactly how I fit on the system. And I said, "Well, the first thing you really need to do is become more flexible. You had some hip stiffness and just didn't have the kind of bend that that was ideal." And so he went out and found Joe Kim in Cleveland. Joe Kim didn't know football. He was just a Taekwondo instructor. And so Joe worked with him on his flexibility and really improvement. And as they worked on the flexibility, and Nick got involved in that too, then he also worked on some of the hand techniques and hand fighting and so forth. And then Joe just continued to develop as a coach, and he does a great job with the fundamentals and techniques. But I wasn't sure about it, so I think I sicked Nick on him and like, hey, make sure this guy's okay.
I don't have time to talk to this guy. Go down and talk to him. Was it something like that, Bill?
Might have been a little something like that. But it really, AP found him. And he did a great job and then once everybody saw how much more flexible Pleasant became, then they jumped in. We put him into our program and he was one of our strength conditioning coaches, but then became really not just a pass rush coach because he can coach anything, be receiver releases and offensive lineman punching and so forth. So there's a lot of inline type skills that he can develop, and he did a great job for me.
I remember the first year you went to the playoff. I called Gene Stallings just to talk about some things about you and your background and having played for him. And the last thing he said to me before I got off the phone, he said, "Now it's your job. You watch and make sure they don't say anything bad about Dabo."
You hadn't done a great job that, Rece.
I've tried, man. I've tried. No. So what was the impetus? How did that relationship develop to that depth?
Yeah, I mean, Coach he's 89 now, and I've had some great mentors and my high school coach, Billy Tohill, was a great mentor in my life, and Bill Curry, I was only with him for a year, but I learned a lot from Coach Curry in that 1 year. But man, my background is different. I mean, I came up I was first college graduate in my family, baby of 3 boys, first one ever, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, you name it. So I really did not know much outside of Pelham, Alabama when I went to Tuscaloosa at 18.
What's Pelham known for?
What's it known for? I mean, we got the Panthers, not a lot. I mean, we put the interstate, once the interstate came through a little bit before middle school, it kind of opened it up a little bit, but not a lot. Bobby Hayes, our mayor, not a lot in Pelham, not a lot. If you lived in Pelham when I was coming up, it was, you didn't have a whole lot, but you didn't know it. And so, but I go in Alabama at 18. I left when I was 31. So I was really shaped there by so many people. Like Coach said, I mean, I had a lot of coaches. I had a lot of players that I learned from, a lot of people that I coached that I learned from, a lot of peers that I worked with. But when Coach Stallings came in my sophomore year, that was a game changer for me because he brought Bill Oliver, who just passed away, by the way, and he was a great coach, and he was one of my coaches, and I coached with him. He brought Woody McCorvey. Ironically, was the receiver coach at Clemson, came to Alabama, and Woody believed in me, and he gave me an opportunity to play that sophomore year, and ended up getting a scholarship, and I never once in my entire life thought of coaching. It was never anything I wanted to do. I never dreamed of it. I wanted to go get a job and make some money. I wanted to help my mom. I mean, it was a challenging time, but Coach Stallings really, I think fueled the belief as well. And when I finished playing, we won the national championship my senior year, and it's one of those things, you go out to spring ball. You know, I was finishing school, graduating in May, and it was like, hey, you need to get a master's degree. I'm like, Coach, I am not getting a master's degree. I'm getting married. I got a job. I'm making $35,000. I'm going to be rich. I'm getting a car. I'm moving to Birmingham. And it's like, hey, you need a master's and I need a GA, and you start in July, and what do you not understand about that? It's kind of like, you know, and I'm kind of mad, like, who's he think he is? Tell me what I can do with my life. And but I just remember calling my now wife saying, hey, you know, well, maybe we'll get engaged next year or something, you know. And I was more afraid of Coach Stallings than I was the guy I took the job with that I was going to start in June. So, but within a week of coaching, it was almost like clarity of life. And that's what coaching has done for me. That's what the game did for me. The game created opportunities. The game created confidence and belief and just skills that it turned my liabilities in life into my greatest assets in life. That's what the game has done for me. And, you know, but most of all, it gave me clarity. And I think it really, truly led to my purpose in life. And it's been awesome at Coach Stallings. Man, I mean, spent 7 years with him. He had 2 bosses in his entire life. His entire, he was a Junction boy. His entire coaching career, he worked for Bear Bryant and Tom Landry. I never met either one of them, but I feel like I did.
Yeah.
You know, because I was with Coach Stallings for 7 years, and then I met Coach McCorvey in 1990, and we've been together since 1990. You know, outside of a few years where we were apart in different paths coaching. When I got the job at Clemson in December of 2008, I called Woody. He was at Mississippi State, and he's been with me ever since. And so it's been a great journey doing life with those guys and learning from them. You know, Coach has always given me a lot of perspective. Now, I will say this, you better not call him unless you want the truth, or at least what he thinks the truth is. There's been many times I've called him for some advice or for just something, and you know, it hasn't always gone the way I thought it would, but it's always been good for me and what I needed to hear. So just great respect for Coach Stallings. And I'm thankful for the path that I've had, and then going to Clemson and working for Coach Tommy Bowden, and then getting to know Bobby Bowden. Mm-hmm. You know, those have been my mentors in life, and then I've just learned from everybody, you know, over the years. But Coach Stallings certainly, you know, was a rock for me.
Did your dad ever try to talk you out of coaching?
Yeah, he did. He sure did. He said, you know, I know he was at Navy. He was making about 18, 19,000 a year, whatever it was. And, you know, it's just the 3 of us, my mom, my dad. We didn't really have much. And he said, you'll never make any money in coaching. You just go get a job. And, you know, and he wanted me to go get a graduate assistant position. And, you know, so you get an education. Maybe you can do some coaching as a GA and, you know, help pay for your education and masters and all that. And so, so I applied to like 125 different schools, you know, every school, every Division I school, all the Mid-American schools, everything. And only got about 3 or 4 responses. But Coach Holtz hired me. And he hired me at North Carolina State as a graduate assistant. And that was in May of 1975. And in June of 1975, Title IX passed. And all those graduate assistants went to women. And so Coach Holtz is the first coach to hire me. His first coach to fire me. And so then I got an unpaid position with the Baltimore Colts, and you know, just an NFL thing. You know, it worked out. It worked out for me.
I would say it worked out okay.
But you know, but I always wanted to be in college because I grew up in college. My dad at you know, North Carolina Navy, and I was headed to NC State, and then you know, then this past year I had a chance to be on a college campus and be part of the, you know, the college experience. It's good. It's different. And it's a real community feeling. You know, it's all the teams. It's not just the football team. It's which was a little bit like that in Boston, you know, where you had the Celtics and the Bruins and the Red Sox, and, you know, and there was a camaraderie there, but not the same as having, you know, people that, you know, are on your campus that, you know, play 2 sports and you see the kids that are on the other teams all the time. You know, things like that. But can I jump in here on a couple questions?
Yeah, man.
I'm going to ask you 2 questions now. Because I've always wondered about this. I heard about it. You know, you know, we each kind of like all have our like little sayings, you know. And I know you have the BYOG. What is that?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, so that came we were playing Notre Dame in 15. There was a hurricane. We hadn't played Notre Dame since the 70s, and so it had been on the schedule for a long time, and it was just a lot had built up into that moment. We had 16 days off because we played 2 games, and we played on it, and so there was just this big buildup. Here comes a hurricane. And so we're going into the game, and it was like this buildup over 16 days going into this game. It was just bigger than life. It was like just took on a life of its own, especially with our fans, and I could just feel the tension with our guys. And it was one of those things, it was kind of like the last thing I said to the team before the game.
Yeah.
And it went viral because that's what was in my head. And I just told the team, I'm like, you know what, listen, hey, there's a lot we don't control. Like, we don't control the weather. We don't control this, and hey, I can give you a scholarship. I can give you a place to live. We can give you food. We can give you a scheme. We can give you, but I can't give you freaking guts. Like you gotta have, this is a BYOG. You gotta bring your own guts. You gotta bring that. We can't give you that. And listen, we're walking into we're an underdog. We're all this and that. And it was crazy. And I mean, when I tell you, in the third quarter, it was raining so hard you couldn't even see the other sideline.
Yeah.
And we played the game. It was a crazy deal. Came down to the last play, a 2-point conversion.
Kaiser rolls, runs into traffic, and comes up a yard short. And the Clemson defense rises up.
And we stop them and win the game. And it was this emotional moment, as sometimes you can have it. And, and in college football, and at Clemson especially, win or lose, everybody comes on the field.
Right.
It's a really crazy scene. And then all of a sudden, it's pouring and they stick a microphone in front of your face and they go, what? And I went, hey, it was BYOG, bring your own guts. And next thing I know, I'm a meme for life.
And tonight, hey, it was BYOG, bring your own guts.
I got Bill Belichick asking me about BYOG.
Well, what about ROI?
Well, that's famous because Stephen A. Smith. I remember we were going into the playoff, maybe a couple years later. I don't know what year it was, but it was. We do these interviews, and they're like, "It's Alabama and Alabama and Alabama," and then it's and I'm like, well, dang, because when I was coming up, it was very simple. Like, you had the bus, and then you had the Roy bus. The rest of y'all go over here, And I, when I first went to Alabama, I had the Roy. We had the Roy walk-on locker room. So you had the team here, and then the Roys were all over here. And if you ever got promoted, like I did, from the Roy locker room, it was a party, and it was like this passing of. It was an amazing moment to go into the other locker room. So the Roy thing has stuck with me for a long time, and it might have happened on doing an interview with you.
What was your reaction to seeing all those teams from your conference make it into the initial rankings?
It's kind of Alabama and then the rest of y'all. We're just glad to be on the Roy bus right now.
He said something. I'm like, oh no, we're on that Roy bus.
Roy bus, rest of y'all.
And so and you say things, and especially in college football, people are very passionate and they hang on to stuff. And next thing you know, with social media, the Roy bus became a thing, and we've been on the Roy bus for 16 years. We're still on it. Welcome to the ACC. We're the Roy bus, so welcome to the ACC. But we got a pretty good driver right here on the ACC Roy bus right here.
That's what he tried.
Big Ten, and the rest of y'all. Here we are.
Roy bus is going to be preseason number 1. Probably this year. He's like, rest of y'all, but
we got the same team we had last year. So how are we preseason? What happened?
Coaching and development is what I say.
Okay.
Hey, he asked you, what would you like to ask Bill Belichick?
Bill Belichick, what would I want to ask? I would say, one thing I would not ask, I would tell you this though. So I do this, 5 days of kind of, you have offensive installation, defensive installation. Well, we do a program installation.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that for years, and I have to say, I have 3 pages of Bill Belichick in my program book, and it's like the six. I think it's culture killers. I think it's what it is that's in the book, and it's you talking about each one of these points, and so that's something there. But I would
probably Jack Easterby put that together with me. I think Jack.
It's pretty good, but we kind of go through that every year, but. There's probably a lot of things.
Don't use that against us.
No, I won't. But there's a lot of things I would like to ask him for sure. I would probably just just say, winning the Super Bowl, because I like to study people. There's a lot of people who win, and you never hear from them again. But to win again and again and again and again, I love to study people, and that's why I've studied them a lot over the years, that can stay motivated to keep winning and to do it at the highest level. And I know you got to have good players, and everybody says, oh, you got good players. Yeah, but not everybody can coach good players. And so I guess the competitive stamina that it takes, what would be one thing that you would tell a coach like me or any coach out there, you've won the Super Bowl, you won it again, you won it again. Like, what was your process of starting over? And I assume you probably, one thing you say, well, we'd start over every year.
Yeah,
you don't carry
sure.
any touchdowns over.
No.
What would be one thing you would say to a coach or a group of coaches of being able to maintain the competitive stamina, the thrill to go win again?
I think a lot of what you said right at the beginning of the interview, Dabo, about, having the right people and having the right culture, because you need people that want to keep achieving that goal. Even though we hit that one, it's like, like Brady and Brewski used to say, which ring do you like the best? The next one. And you just don't stop. It just keeps going. You just keep going. And really, you need people that, you can't just do it by yourself. You need more.
Yeah.
And you need, and then get more people like that, more Rodney Harrisons, more Teddy Bruschi's, more Tom Brady's, more, and then some of the guys we brought in were guys that had never won before, guys like Corey Dillon, Antoine Smith, guys like that really, gave us a lift. Roman Pfeiffer, Chris Long, had like 10 losing seasons at the Rams and came in there and gave us a lift, to help us win the Super Bowl. And they really appreciated winning more than some of the guys that have been there, that have been winning every year, Jason McCourty was like that. They were 0-16 in Cleveland the year before and came in, and one of the messages he gave to the team was, fellas, don't take this for granted. Like, we're working hard, but there's a reason for it. And you want to be working hard and you want to be pushed. This is what it's about. I've been on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it's hard for you to say that because, when you've had success. But when guys come in and really appreciate it, they deliver a great message there. So I think it's getting people that believe in that, believe in the culture.
Yeah. And one other question I would have is that I've kind of watched you and I've drawn encouragement from you is coaching your sons or working with your sons. So I have 2 older sons that have chosen to get into coaching. And they were kind of GAs that are now player development guys. One's working with tight ends, one's with receivers. And last year was the first year that I really enjoyed it. And I know that you've been able to work with your sons.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
It's been a great experience. So, because as you know, you miss some things, as a dad, as they're growing up and, you're playing, you got away games and they're playing their games and you can't get to all of them and things like that. But no, it's been great to work with them. And it's funny when you hear them say some of the things that you said, and you're like, yeah, no, they were listening. You know what? They do that too. But the great thing about them too is, and you probably experienced this a little bit, but not everybody on your staff will always challenge you.
Yeah.
They won't. But your kids will. They'll come in and be like,
absolutely,
Dad, what are you doing? Like, we never used to do this,
absolutely.
And now we're starting to do this. Like, why did you change? Like, and I'm thinking to myself, my God, this got away from me. Like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Thank you for redirecting me. So that's been good. It really has, and it's just sometimes they refer to me as dad, and then they've been reprimanded by some of their other coaches. Like, you can't call him, just call him coach. You can't call him dad.
Yeah. I love that.
But yeah, it's interesting because you treat all the coaches the same, but they're not all the same because you're your sons, but they are the same. And so it's and it's the same thing. They're you're their dad, but you're also the head coach, and so sometimes it's a little it's a little navigation there, but it's so much. It's 99% good and 1% navigation.
That's great. Yeah. That's great.
Why was it important to you developing a relationship to do the Belichick travel agency thing. You go to the Super Bowl, you handle 1,600 ticket requests or whatever it was, and personally do the hotel rooms. Why was that important? Why does that help build a team?
Well, when you get to that point, when you're playing in the national championship, you're playing in the Super Bowl, you've worked your whole year and honestly life to get to that point. And so what's important to the players and their families for that game is in a way affects the outcome of the game. The players get distracted by, and we all can, about hotel rooms and bus tickets and post-game party tickets and this and that and that. And, you want to make sure that you try to, avoid players getting caught up or assistant coaches getting caught up in situations that will really detract from their preparation for the game. And so, whether they get a king bed or a queen bed or two doubles, for some people, it might really make a difference, and you try to make that work. And, I always try to put it into it, 48 hours after we went through the, get all the requests in, handle everything, put it 48 hours. But sometimes things came up and you just had to, make a call later in the week and, change a room or do something to accommodate something that was unexpected. And sometimes I just felt like that was important enough to do it. So it's we kind of joke about the travel agency, but it's a good problem to have. It's a very high-class problem when you're dealing with national championship and Super Bowl tickets and passes and stuff like that. It's where you want to be.
Yeah. And it's doing something for the players, which I've been in your facility a number of times. Everything there is about the players. They've got miniature golf. They've got golf simulator, basketball court. They've got a slide. They've got a slide. You go down. When's the last time you were on a slide?
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't know if I can fit on one now.
Is it a similar thing that you want to have a culture there that proves it's about the players, it's something for them?
Yeah, well, everything in our program is about what's best for the players. Now, sometimes what's best for the player they don't like, but that's called wisdom, right? So, but everything in our organization is what's best for the player. How do we serve their heart and not their talent, and how do we fulfill the purpose of the program? And for us, it's graduation, making sure we equip them as men, they have a great experience. That I've got 24 former players on my staff. Mm-hmm. They had a great experience at Clemson. And that everybody, and then win a championship. But it's always been in that order. And, when I got the job, we hadn't won a championship in 20 years. And every kid that has signed at Clemson since February of 2009, every single kid has won a championship. Most have won multiple. Well, the only people in that building who have not won a championship are the kids that are just showing up there. And we hadn't won 10 games in 20 years. We've won 10 plus 13 out of the last 14 years. So, but it all goes back to, not what we do, but why we do it. What's our purpose? And here it is. And everything, we have the highest graduation rate in America. And it's all been, we have purpose-driven results. And that's how we've done it, over and over and over again. And it just doesn't, it doesn't get old. But when we built the building and set it up to accomplish a couple things. One is, I want them to have some fun, and I want them to be in the building.
Yeah.
Our kids are in the building. I'm not kidding. Our kids are in the building all day, every day. That's number one. So the casual chit chat, the meals, I wanted our staff to be able to sit down and eat with these guys, and you want the DB to get to know the OL guy. And so we've created that environment, and they want to be there. But there's also competition every day. There's a golf simulator, there's bowling, there's pickleball, there's, ping pong, there's the game, Fortnite, all that stuff. It's always, so they're hanging out together all the time. And the cumulative effect of that is hard to quantify, and how your team gets developed and how they spend time. So that's how we built it. The slide was something I was like, let's have some fun. You can't go down the slide. That's how I go to work every day, right down the slide, right out to the practice field. And you cannot be, it's impossible to not be happier when you get to the end of the slide than you were the 2 seconds before. All right, so it's a great thing. And I love to watch them too. That's my only regret about building the building is we didn't put 2 slides. Because they come out of all the meetings and they queue up And it's, but they won't take the stairs. They all love to go down the slide and right into the locker room or the weight room. So it's a great building. We were really blessed when we were able to build it, but we have a lot of space, but it's just created an opportunity, to where, we can live together and be a family. And we're fortunate because not a lot of places have the amount of space that we were able to have to build this facility. And so, there's a lot of purpose. We do swim lessons. In our training room, we have a huge pool in there, and we do swim lessons. We do golf lessons. And I think all those things are great. And you get to know people in a different way. I always say, that's how we build team. If 2 + 2 = 4 at Clemson, we ain't winning. 2 + 2's got to equal 10. And so how do you do that? It's got to be yoked together. Well, how do you get that done? They got to know each other. They don't go home to their wives and kids and mortgages and things like that. It's different than pro football, right? Like they truly are doing football life together every single day. So we've created this environment that is really conducive to them doing that and developing a closer team.
Dabo's had books written about him. He hasn't written one yet. If he decides to do it, you've just written a book, be wildly successful. What would you tell him about the process of doing?
Let's talk about that off camera. There's a lot of great things, but I'd give you some advice.
What would the title of your book be? UIOG?
No. I've already got the title. I've actually written a book. It just hadn't been published.
Is that right?
I can't get nobody to want it. But
no, I know that's not true.
I did a when I was turning 50, I did a 50 days till 50, and I started this process of journaling, which it really kind of changed things for me. So I've journaled ever since I was 50. And then like Coach, there's a lot of things that we do in this profession, whether you're going to speak or you're speaking to your team all the time, right? And you're always crafting messages. And I would say that's probably how there's a lot of messages that you've done and that I've done that I could probably sit with somebody for 2 hours and it's a book. And it's just stuff that comes natural to us because we've done it for a long time. But yeah, I would say, believe. I started the program with 2 signs. One says believe, and the other one says it can't be done with the T crossed out. Because, I've had a lot of people tell me what I can't do for a long time, but I'm just thankful that I've always had an attitude of belief, even when it didn't make sense. And so I would say believe. It can't be done with the T crossed out. Because if I can do it, anybody can do it, because there ain't nothing special about me.
Plenty special about both of you, that's for sure. I appreciate the time that you've given us. We're looking forward to October 4th.
My Patriots tour. All I can tell you, I guess my real reaction was when the greatest coach in the history of the NFL comes to the ACC to coach North Carolina, and I look on our screen, we play, I'm like, yep, it is 2025, because anything can happen. It is the most 2025 thing ever, but I'm excited about it. I know it'll be an unbelievable challenge. And then Bill O'Brien the next week. Yeah. So we got the offensive version up there and the defensive version. So we're completely, and we're going to Boston. So it's the Patriots tour for the Tigers this year, and hopefully we can find a way to make it competitive. So great respect for Coach.
Yeah, likewise.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Couple of the greatest guys. Thank you so much. Wish you the best this season. Always great to visit with you. Check out Bill's book for sure. And when Dabo releases his, buy it as well. This has been a special edition of ACC Huddle. Thanks for being with us.